I strongly disliked pretty much every pre-workout on the market. It's the beta alanine and it's the tingles and like that pins and needles feeling that a lot of pre-workouts give you. Also the very high levels of caffeine that truly do lead to a crash. If it's banned in the EU, avoid it. I mean, you walk through any aisle of the grocery store, there's a lot of those ingredients that are banned in a lot of other countries. And it just makes you think, why is something like Red 40 and Yellow 5 in 30% of our shelves? It's proven to be cancerous. The gut truly is a second brain. I mean, people say that. We say like, oh, like I just feel it in my gut. That's truly your gut talking to your brain. There's a constant strain of communication between the two, and so much of our diet actually destroys the healthy bacteria within our gut. Anything that you put into your stomach that is synthetic, artificial, endocrine disrupting, whatever it may be, that's going to damage the healthy chemistry inside your gut.
We're seeing men with rates of colon cancer in their 30s that we've never seen before.
100 years ago, the average testosterone level was almost double than what it is now. Everything that I eat in my apartment is just super plain. This is more of a movement and what I like to hope and consider some sort of an awakening.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Gut Check podcast. Today I am joined by Austin Greto, who is a fitness influencer and the founder of a botanical-based performance drink called Goodroot. We have a wonderful conversation around the supplement industry, how we can create better, cleaner products in the supplement industry, as well as men's health, weightlifting, bodybuilding, and more. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. And as always, let us know what you think. Austin, thank you for joining the Gut Check podcast. It's awesome to meet you. Let's just start with your background and obviously weightlifting, coaching, and then also now the founder of Goodroot.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. For those of you who don't know me or not familiar, I influence people through fitness. That's how I like to put it. And I've been training and coaching, training in particular for over 15 years now, and coaching for around 8. And I was an athlete my whole life. That's really how I got into the gym and the fitness realm. I was lifting in particular for football and baseball. And, from when I was 14, when I first stepped into the gym, I truly fell in love with it. It was a temple to me. So I'm very fortunate in the sense that pursuing fitness and getting in shape never really felt like a chore to me, which has always been very nice. And I just had a strong desire to learn from a very, very early age when I first started lifting. And throughout that journey was really, after college when I started getting into social media and then started trading people online. That's when I would say I really kind of kicked things into fourth gear from an educational perspective. And then also just with my own body. I mean, priorities shifted. My body started to change a little bit. It started to respond a little bit better to a lot of the things I was doing. And I was then able to pass that knowledge onto other people. And then on the note of Goodroot, it's a natural performance drink. And the reason that I came up with Goodroot is because I strongly disliked pretty much every pre-workout on the market. So we initially labeled ourselves as a pre-workout. We're now a natural performance drink because we're the anti-pre-workout. And really what it is it's a supplement that's going to give you the endurance, the energy, the recovery, and the focus that you're looking for, that you're going to get through all of these other pre-workouts on the market that typically have a laundry list of compounds, additives, synthetic ingredients, but it's going to give you the same outcomes, but it's strictly botanical based. And really what happened was I was taking a lot of these ingredients that are in Goodroot now, but I was taking them individually. So I was ordering big bags of beetroot powder. I was ordering bags of maca root. I was taking turmeric and black pepper. And it got to a point where I was like, why don't I just kind of make this palatable and give people the option to have a cleaner alternative to fueling their workouts. And from there, that's really how Goodroot started.
What were some of the side effects? Because I mean, there's tons of pre-workout side effects that, or crashes that kind of pushed you from saying, okay, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'm going to build my own company. What were some of those that, other consumers may be going through?
Yeah, so the number one thing for me that listen, a lot of people do like it, but it's the beta alanine and it's the tingles and like that pins and needles feeling that a lot of pre-workouts give you, and also the very high levels of caffeine.
Right.
Now, I do want to preface this conversation by saying not all pre-workouts are bad. I'm not the type of person that's going to come in here and say, Goodroot is the only option, everything else is bad. There is a lot of science that backs the ingredients in other pre-workouts that show certain outcomes that you're looking to achieve when it comes to, say, increasing your VO2 max, increasing blood flow, hydration, whatever it may be. But the gap that we identified was that there really just weren't any natural or clean alternatives. And that's kind of the gap that we wanted to fill. It's like, hey, if you want to take these other pre-workouts, that's totally fine. But if I can, increase my VO2 max and increase ATP production and get cleaner energy through botanical based ingredients, a lot of people live that kind of life and choose a more or have a more holistic perspective on things. So why isn't that an option in this market? And that's really, really why we created this. And when it comes to a lot of the common side effects with current pre-workouts, as I mentioned, you have certain ingredients like beta alanine that are going to give you that pins and needles, that itchy feeling, and the higher doses of caffeine that truly do lead to a crash. But what you can do is you can have certain ingredients that counteract that. And there are a lot of pre-workouts that are now incorporating L-theanine, which what you want when you have a high stimulant is something that's going to calm your brain, and that's going to prevent a crash. So for the longest time, all these pre-workouts, all they're focusing on is just quick energy, get you in the gym, hype you up. All they need you is for an hour, and then after that, that's where you have like this crash, this fatigue, the drowsiness. So what we did was we incorporated ingredients like macroot and sage that particularly focus on enhancing your mood. So they have within those ingredients, they have certain chemicals and enzymes that are going to calm your brain and relax your nervous system. So when you ingest a stimulant, you want to be alert, but at the same time, you don't want your brain firing at a million miles per hour, and you actually want to calm it down. So
Right.
balancing a stimulant with other ingredients like sage and macroot that are going to improve your mood by actually calming your brain down, that's what's going to prevent the crash. So you get that alert without kind of the anxiety or the rush that a typical caffeine spike will give you. And then it'll be more kind of a level set energy spike. And then because your brain's already calm, you're not going to have that crazy crash. So it's smoother, no jitters. And, if you look at it that way, it feels a lot healthier.
Yeah, and I mean, there's obviously this category of dietary supplements is massive, and especially when it comes to the fitness, supplement industry. What have been some of the biggest learnings for you, or biggest surprises as you've gotten into this and been, building the early years of Goodroot?
Yeah. So the biggest surprise is that turns out it's a lot harder to build $100 million business than I thought.
Yeah, that's what they tell us.
That was definitely a surprise. Not a surprise. I knew it was going to be difficult, but
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge right now is the decrease in attention span. Meaning everyone, whether you're posting an ad, you're posting organic content, whatever it may be, you have 1 second, less than a second to grab their attention and less than 5 seconds to deliver your message. And if you fail on the first, you're going to fail on your second. If you fail on the second, that ad is done. That piece of content is gone in the wind. They're already now 4 or 5 videos down. So because Goodroot has taken such a different and unique approach within the market, I think our biggest challenge is communicating to the public why we're different and the benefits that we can provide. And one thing that we did wrong was we actually labeled ourselves as a pre-workout. So on all of our bottles, it says pre-workout. We recently went through a bit of a change where we're now calling ourselves a natural performance drink. And the reason being is because there is a stigma associated with pre-workout. When you think pre-workout, you think, only bodybuilders, powerlifters take it. It's,
Yep.
A heavy stimulant. You're going to crash. In the past, people have been hospitalized because it was extremely unregulated. It still is unregulated, but some of those ingredients are now banned. So there is this crazy stigma where it's like, hey, pre-workout, not touching that thing, which I get. And I guess it was kind of silly to label ourselves as a pre-workout, even though we kind of are, but we're so much more because of the ingredients that are also extremely micronutrient dense. For instance, we have moringa leaf in there, which has a ton of micronutrients, ton of antioxidants, and then all the other ingredients. It really does act as somewhat of like a multivitamin in a sense. And there's a lot more utility to it. I mean, I'll take it in the morning for work because it is such a strong cognitive boost and it's very steady and calming. I know people that take it before golf because they don't want to take coffee because the last thing you want is jitters when you're trying to make a putt.
I was just gonna say, this sounds like a great golf, tennis. I know,
exactly.
You guys advertise as well for women in Pilates, but I mean, just like kind of an overall, it almost seems like a very natural sort of coffee replacement or caffeine replacement in the morning.
Yeah, so we're repositioning ourselves in the market. That has been one of the bigger. I guess the repositioning isn't as much of a challenge because we're kind of going through with that, and that's just like part of the learning curve of building a business. But going back to the original point where getting the message across of what we do, why we're different, and why you could really use a product like Goodroot is the biggest challenge.
So you were talking about some of the ingredients that you guys don't have in your products, but there's a lot of artificial flavors. There's a lot of just really, really bad ingredients, to be frank, that are in these dietary supplement companies and products. And I'd be curious to maybe hear you, as you've thought through the product development with Goodroot, rank the worst products, or at least share some of the products that you guys just kind of refuse to use or refuse to touch in your product development.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is a very important question because I think it goes much broader than just supplementation.
That's right.
Now, my rule of thumb that I recommend everyone follows, do your own research on this, but if it's banned in the EU, avoid it because there are so many ingredients in. I mean, you walk through any aisle of the grocery store, there's a lot of those ingredients that are banned in a lot of other countries, and it just makes you think, why is something like red 40 and yellow 5 in 30% of our shelves when it's proven to be cancerous and be hormone disrupting, and other countries have been avoiding it for decades? Like, why are we so inclined to continue to push that out? And now, there is a little bit of a shift because I think there is a lot more pressure on the FDA to make some of these changes, but it's going to be a long time until we catch up to other countries that have prioritized the public's health. So around everything that we'll avoid, typically, if it's banned somewhere else, it should be banned in the US. So if you're thinking about where to start there. So it's like the red 40, the yellow 5, BHAs, which is a preservative for fats and oils, which is really, really bad for you. As for the supplementation aspect of it, because we take a very different approach where everything is really botanical based, there's not a lot that we have to kind of like look out for to avoid. And as we continue to develop multiple SKUs and a multi-product line, right now we have a performance drink. We want to incorporate like a sleep aid and immune support, a post-workout, and they're all going to be botanical based and have botanical based ingredients that provide the same outcome. So say if it's like a sleep aid, we're going to have things like probably have sage in it again, black cherry extract. So things that are going to naturally improve the quality of your sleep. So we're not going to be looking to really add a ton of different compounds. We're not going to have any artificial flavoring or coloring. So any of that stuff by default, we're going to avoid. And that was actually one of the bigger challenges with Goodroot as well, is because there's no artificial flavoring and you have such earthy ingredients like cordyceps and maca root and beetroot. It was extremely difficult to make it palatable. That took us like 9 months of
Yeah.
just like every 3 weeks, just a back and forth. It's like, oh, this one tastes bad. This one tastes bad. This one's kind of good. Change it a little bit. Cause
Yep.
you're basically taking dirt and trying
Yep.
to, trying to make it taste good. And
Yeah.
that was a huge pain. But yeah, I think from, our approach, what we want to avoid is just particularly like anything artificial or fake. Where we took a botanical based approach where, you know, we identify certain outcomes that a consumer is trying to achieve with particular products,
Mm-hmm.
and we match those ingredients with plants and botanicals that essentially give you the same outcome. So if you look at, say, L-citrulline, which is probably the most common ingredient in all pre-workouts, that's going to boost nitric oxide, increase blood flow and oxygen to the muscles, enhance your workout, increase your VO2 max. Beetroot powder does the exact same thing, boost it
Mm-hmm.
up to 20%. So, you have these two products, exact same outcome. One is coming from plants, one essentially isn't. So that's really the approach that we take.
So obviously, Daily Nori is a gut health company, and everything we're talking about obviously goes into our gut microbiome, and so much of what you're discussing too, and just how we even absorb these nutrients plays a big role. And if we have something like leaky gut, men and women aren't going to be able to absorb the nutrients that they need. When you guys have looked at this, from a prebiotic perspective, probiotics, digestive enzymes, all of these kind of really buzzwords, but important things to consider. I know you guys use, I think, a fermented botanical, correct, as a prebiotic in your product. What are some of the mechanisms that you think through, when it comes to protecting, repairing the gut and gut lining during workouts and post workout?
Yeah, so we don't have any fermented
Okay.
botanicals in our stack in particular, but essentially anything fermented on that note in your diet is extremely beneficial. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
myself have a constant rotation of a jar of sauerkraut in my
Yep.
fridge,
Yep.
and I will eat that. I'll take 4 spoon or forkfuls every single morning, because one thing that people don't really understand that I think they're starting to is that the gut truly is a second brain. I mean, people
Mm-hmm.
say that, but when you say like, oh, like I just feel it in my gut, and that's truly your gut talking to your brain. There's a
That's right.
constant strain of communication between the two, and fueling your gut in particular, because so much of our diet actually destroys the healthy bacteria within our gut. And it's important not only just from like an overall health perspective, but even just hormonally, that's going to impact your workouts. It's going to impact your energy levels. That's going to impact your workouts. So at the very least, just kind of starting to be cognizant of what certain foods do for your gut and what could be bad for your gut, and tying it back to the pre-workout
Yep.
conversation, anything that you put into your stomach that is heavily synthetic, artificial, endocrine disrupting, whatever it may be, that's going to damage the healthy chemistry inside your gut, which is going to be bad for your health. And you do that on a daily basis, you could have some long-term side effects there.
I'm curious because obviously you train a ton of men, which is awesome. And I would assume that your audience for Goodroot is a mixture between men and women, but you're advertising to a lot of men, and you're saying things that are more commonly advertised towards women, right? Botanicals,
Mm-hmm.
clean ingredients, all these different things. Men, we know from just a data perspective, are more reactive with their health than proactive, right? The
Mm-hmm.
one area that men are more proactive is weightlifting, right? Weightlifting, muscle building, right? They'll be very proactive and goal oriented around that. I'm curious about your perception of how men's health is changing, because we are seeing a shift and we are seeing men be more proactive versus reactive. I think kind of a great case study I always look at is one of our good friends who, his father had a couple of cardiovascular events, and now he's 40, but even in his late 30s started to take a proactive approach and just make lifestyle changes because he saw his father go through that. There's things like colon cancer that is right now growing, unfortunately, at kind of exponential numbers and impacting men at a younger age. We're seeing, men with rates of colon cancer in their 30s that we'd never seen before, right? So we're starting to see some of these things shift. negatively with men's health. And because of that, I think you're seeing more positive awareness. Someone saying, hey, maybe I will take a Goodroot versus, the kind of standard pre-workout that's been on the shelf for 10 or 15 years at GNC. Love to hear you, explain what you think is happening with men's health and with, men that are in the gym and just also out of the gym, lifestyle orientation, switching. And why is that important to be more proactive as a man versus reactive as men more historically have been?
To start, I think that there's just so much more information out there. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the bigger pieces, is that we're becoming more informed on what we're putting into our bodies. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, I think a huge component to that is social media, where you have half the world documenting every step of their life, every single thing that they're consuming, how it's affecting their bodies. And
Mm-hmm.
you look back 20 years ago, that really wasn't available. You had whatever you saw in the news, doing your own research online, older studies, but now it's truly, every time you open up your phone, you have an influx of information that's being thrown in front of your face. So people are just starting to become more aware, and which is great, because that is the first step, is being aware of what's out there and what can potentially happen long term. And I think that there's also there's a lot of kind of value right now in prioritizing your health. I think that I don't want to call it a trend, because I truly do think it's here to stay.
Right.
Where and like, the partying phase will never completely die out, but there's a huge wave of like this wellness community where people didn't really have an opportunity to like socialize with other like-minded individuals, and now you have these massive platforms where you have people from all over the country, all over the world, that are able to share common interests, share common experiences, and actually build out this whole social community. So I think the wellness community as a whole has just been growing so drastically, to the point where now so many people are becoming aware of a lot of the problems that are out there. And listen, life is good. Life is better than it's ever been. There's no easier time in human history to live. Like, yes, there's a lot of misfortune, but that's just a fact. It's easier to live now than there was 100 years ago. And I think people are enjoying that. And that means if they want to live a longer life, they have to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
And, I just know from my own experience as well, when I first started working out compared to now, my workout regimen, my priorities, my perspective on training has completely changed, because my body's starting to change. And I'm 29. I've had, unfortunately, 3 knee surgeries, partially torn labrum currently in both my shoulders that I've had for a while. So now I've been starting to think like I need to focus more on functional movements, mobility, because I want to continue to lift and be in shape and have muscle mass for as long as I can. But if I train like I'm, trying to be a linebacker, that's probably not going to happen. Right. So I would say that it's really the information that's being put in front of everyone. And on that note, I do think that it is, and I'm curious to get your perspective on this.
Yeah.
I do think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because there's a lot of kind of clickbaity information, which I totally understand as someone who is quote unquote an influencer, and viral videos are very important. It's all about engagement, hooks, short attention spans, where there's like these micro trends within the health and wellness space that people latch onto to grab your attention, to try and almost make you feel a little bit scared to then watch the video to get views. And now, you have this platform that was initially supposed to spread positive information about health and wellness and make people better, where now so many people are just competing for views and likes. And, for instance, there was, I want to say it was like 6 months ago, maybe longer, I saw this video, and he was a pretty big creator, and he was saying that the majority of the fruits within the grocery stores have this like waxy film that are like destroying your health, or whatever angle he put on it. And it's like, listen, everything's going to have pesticides. That's kind of the world that we live in. It's tough to avoid it unless you're sourcing it from a local farm. But, you have a responsibility to relay some sort of transparency and honesty where, avoiding that film or whatever it may be by completely removing fruits from your diet is going to
Yeah.
be worse than actually consuming that. So now
Yeah.
you're just adding all these little kind of like micro fears within health and wellness just to kind of force down some clickbait that are actually probably doing more harm than good. And I'm curious if you've seen that on your world as
Yeah,
well.
I think my pessimistic view, and then I'll share my optimistic view, but my pessimistic view of a lot of what's going on, and we can talk about supplements in general, but just kind of even zooming out more so just advertising, is that it's a race to the bottom in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of ways. The fact that we're talking about attention spans here that are 2-3 seconds, which you're totally right, is a problem. I mean, this is a total race to the bottom. I think that there's a lot of opportunity. And as with everything with media and technology, there's a lot of potential upside, right? And good information sharing. And to your point, community that's gathering and really like minded, focused on the right things, which is amazing. But then there's unfortunately also the bad side of it, which is just the total consumption of garbage. And, you look at a platform like TikTok in Meta, but you look at this and it's really unfortunate how it is a race to the bottom. And as a someone who's creating products and selling products, then you have a pressure to sell the products, discount the products, and kind of participate in that kind of modern era of advertising. And so it's been a difficult thing for us as a brand, and I think for most brands. But you have to navigate, okay, how do we participate in this in a way that is true to ourselves, on brand? Because for us, we've created really high quality products that are innovative, great pricing, all of these different things. And we have to advertise them. You have to market them. Everyone does. And so you have to sort of play a little bit in that space and play the game, so to speak, but not lose your brand guardrails and not totally go off track. And so, yeah, I think, it's an interesting kind of world. And then when you add in the fact that you're selling a supplement, which is even, more kind of competitive, harder to differentiate. They have been known as kind of snake oil in the past because
Mm-hmm.
you have high margins. And so there's been a lot of manipulation and a lot of just really garbage that's been sold for decades. Like, it's lasted for decades, and there still is a lot of that, right? So you're navigating through all of that and trying to get someone's attention and say this is a great product. So it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And I think that the approach is, it's not, there is no kind of overnight success. I mean, when you see an overnight success, something that just pops out of nowhere in supplements, that's really actually something probably to be weary of, whether it's just an incredible amount of marketing spend or whatever it is, because it doesn't happen naturally. It's not the natural cycle of a business. So, I mean, it's the longevity game, I think, that we're interested in. But how do you advertise honestly and effectively? And effectively means you have to grab their attention. So that, I think, is everyone's challenge right now in this space. I mean, I think from our perspective, and probably what you've found as well, is that the health and the holistic health aspect will win in the end. The quality of the product and the longevity of someone's health will win in the end. So if you stay focused on that and stay focused on those pillars. But it's obviously it's difficult when you're up against these pre-workouts that use all these artificial flavors, artificial colors. They're just really, really bad. And I think it's smart that you guys have rebranded yourself as more of a performance drink, right? Performance beverage, and looking at that in more of how we've seen kind of the growth of, whether it be the greens powders or some of these coffee replacements or some of these really legitimate needs that people have within their kind of health regime they're looking for. So yeah, the advertising stuff, I think, is going to be tough. The supplement and health and wellness categories are going to continue to grow. And so it's a matter of, how do you come up with the best and most creative ways to tell your story, but then also be able to back that up, And so when this as a, content creator and influencer yourself in the fitness space, I mean, a lot of, the influencers, and I'd love to get your perspective of this, but a lot of them are paid to push a supplement, right? And that's how products are getting out there. And that's not necessarily doesn't reflect the best product being out there, right? It reflects maybe the company who has raised the most money and paid the most people to be their spokespeople. So it's a very difficult category to navigate. It's a very difficult in industry in general, consumer product goods right now and packaged goods right now. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, whether you're, a beverage, a supplement, whatever it might be. At the end of the day, these are all companies that have to have their own marketing vehicles. So it's a I don't know, an interesting time to be building one of these companies. And it's certainly an interesting time from an advertising perspective, because like I said, I mean, you do have to participate, you have to market your company. But how do you do that honestly and genuinely, when you have a product like a Goodroot, right? That is very, very different than the competitors.
Yeah. And it's, I didn't realize it until I was actually on this side of the space, just how important marketing really is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
for any consumer good. I mean, you will succeed or you will fail from your marketing.
Yep.
And
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So, couple of questions for you. I think, again, kind of getting back into some of the things that we were, curious about, and I think, speaking more to men's health directly, one of the things that, we've noticed is that there's just this massive opportunity to talk to men and about colon health and gut health more so, but through the intake of fiber, right? So I don't know if you guys have looked at this at all with your product development or just your approach to your approach to the category, but 95% of Americans are fiber deficient, right? So it's a huge deficiency. And especially within the weightlifting and fitness bodybuilding world, there's a lot more protein intake, right, for men, but a lot of times the fiber conversation gets left out of the discussion, right? Left out. And there's a lot of fiber deficiencies that are then causing colon health issues, et cetera. So would love to hear how you approach that, either, in looking at, from a personal perspective or from a product development perspective as well, and just talking about the importance of fiber for men.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, just the level of deficiency across the country, it is truly alarming, and it's amongst any kind of supplement or nutrient, that's easily the least talked about when it's arguably one of the bigger problems. So from a product development standpoint, that is something that's on the roadmap. We want to create a gut support product as well. We have a few others that are in front of that. So transparently speaking, within the next year, I don't see that being on our available on our website unless we do come into some major funding, which you never know. Yep. But I do think it's very important. As I mentioned, we want to do a sleep aid and immune support, a post workout. We do want to do a gut support as well. So we want to create kind of just an overall product line. And the approach from, or something that I've always looked at with fiber, because I've always prioritized weightlifting and hypertrophy training and muscle building. That's just been my style. That's been my goals. I recently signed up for my first bodybuilding show this upcoming summer. Wow. So that's going to always be, my kind of passion when it comes to fitness. And how it relates is, one of the most common questions I get is, what do you do when you're cutting? What are some recommendations for losing weight? It's like, well, one of the first things you probably do is look at your fiber intake as well. I mean, the biggest issue with cutting and kind of putting yourself in a deficit is that you are going to be deficient in certain areas and you're going to be hungry. One of the best ways to, boost your digestion and feel fuller longer is to have adequate fiber within your diet. And I think that's really kind of, I don't want to say maybe slept on, but I think it is. I don't think people understand how fiber also will relate to just overall cravings and kind of regulating your digestion as well, which is extremely important when you're, eating 500 less calories than you should for 12 weeks, making sure that when you are depriving your body of a lot of nutrients and macronutrients, that you're giving it the fuel to process everything properly. And that's really where the fiber is going to come in.
Yeah. And just a quick question on just, I would say the sequence of even how to take your product versus other pre-workouts. Cause a lot of people will drink coffee or take a pre-workout on an empty stomach. What does that do to the body? I mean, we know that irritates the gut lining? I mean, does that start to cause colon issues? What does that do when you're taking, thinking about cutting specifically, but having high doses of caffeine or a pre-workout on an empty stomach?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things is it's going to spike your cortisol, and that's extremely common. A lot of people like to fast, and I think that there's a lot of benefits to fasting, and I do kind of advise a lot of people to try. If you're typically someone who's a volume eater and you're trying to cut, something like fasting will help because you're then able to eat higher quantities of food in a shorter period of time, so you can like get that satiated feeling. um, but that, going back to the reason why we put macroot and sage into our stack is for that reason in particular, is because what caffeine does naturally, and then how people consume caffeine on a daily basis. Most people are taking it on an empty stomach. Most people are doing it first thing in the morning on their way to the office. A lot of people just avoid breakfast, or not breakfast people in general. So you're
Yeah.
just taking pure caffeine between 200 and 300 milligrams. Also, one thing that people don't realize is that, if you Google how much caffeine is in a cup of coffee, first thing that's going to come up, 95 milligrams. That's like a small, like watered down diner cup of coffee. A medium, I'm sorry, a grande, as I should say, from from Starbucks has 220 milligrams of caffeine. The
Wow.
large, the venti, is, I believe, around like the 300. You have
Wow.
people that are having two of those a day, and they're probably thinking like, oh, each of these are maybe 100 milligrams of caffeine. So I think people don't realize how much caffeine they're taking on a daily basis. Listen, I'm a big caffeine guy myself. I'm not knocking it,
Yep.
but you also want to balance it out with things that are going to bring down your cortisol, or at least prevent it from rising. So when you are taking
Right.
caffeine and on an empty stomach, you want things that are going to calm your brain a little bit, and that's
Mhm.
what the sage and the macroot do. L-theanine is extremely popular as well. It's in like a lot of kind of cognitive boosting
Mhm.
drinks as well. But yeah, if you're going to take it on an empty stomach, it's going to have some sort of damage, as you mentioned, on the gut. It's a bit harsh,
Mhm.
but for your overall mood, hunger levels, everything else, you're going to want to do something that's going to then calm your brain, because that's actually where you get the kind of focus benefits from a stimulant. It's really only if you can take something that's going to calm your brain at the same time.
We talk about this a lot with women and fasting, and it just, to your point, I think, my perspective of it is it's a total personal kind of health decision, right? Depending on where you're at, what your goals are, et cetera. Like, for example, I don't think women that are of reproductive age and want to be pregnant in the next 5 or 10 years should go too heavy on fasting, right? They should probably have breakfast and proteins in the morning. If you're menopause, postmenopause, and you're trying to lose some belly fat or something, fasting might not be a bad idea, right? So I mean, it really depends on, for women, I think much more to do with hormone health. I'd
Mm-hmm.
love to hear your take, and especially, obviously you have spent time, I'm sure, testing yourself and focusing on optimizing your own hormone levels because of, with competing and wanting to do that, I'm sure, in a safe and sustainable way. But what are some of the most overlooked right now, overlooked areas of men's hormone health and what you're seeing? Because the headlines just read like overall testosterone dropping, all of these different things that are going on, which we know a lot of those are lifestyle related. But it would be curious to hear kind of how you're thinking through specifically how to optimize hormone health and what men should be looking at right now with their hormone health.
So I think hormone health is probably one of the trickier obstacles in kind of modern society, or in the health space, because if you look at the average testosterone level now, I mean, every few years they're lowering what the baseline is and what they consider normal. I mean, you go
Yeah,
back
let's talk
100
about that for a
years.
minute. Someone else was on this show and they were talking about
Yeah.
that as well. So this is kind of important to discuss. So just because
Hmm.
something is common, right, doesn't mean it's normal. And there's this
Exactly.
common thread of men's testosterone levels dropping. And now what you were saying is they're kind of changing the goalposts or the benchmarks of what is normal. So
Mhm.
yeah, tell us what you know about that and, your feedback on that specifically.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to everything that we're putting in our body. I mean, if you look back 100 years ago, the average testosterone level was almost double than what it is now. I mean, you even look
Gee.
at like just these old pictures and videos, and obesity wasn't a thing. It really
Yeah.
like didn't exist, And then you fast forward 100 years, which isn't like it's not a lot of time. That's
Yeah.
in if you look at the
Yeah.
course of history, 100 years is a fraction, and you now have what a 40% obesity rate, 60% are overweight, and it's just all everything that's being put onto our bodies. I mean, I don't think people do this enough. I just challenge you to go down an aisle of the grocery store, not on the outside, because the outside is typically the
Mhm.
produce. It's your vegetables, your meats, everything that you really need. Um, just take like a loaf of bread or a bag of chips and like look at the ingredient list, and
Mhm.
you'll maybe know one or two of those words out of like the 50. There
Yep.
shouldn't be 50 ingredients in a loaf of bread. It's
Yeah.
like, why are they in there? And it's
Yep.
like our bodies really just can't process it and break it down, and it is disrupting our hormones. And like
Mhm.
if something is disrupting your hormones, I mean, one of the biggest fat burner one of the best ways your body can help burn fat is by having high testosterone levels, and
Right.
the lower the testosterone, lower the metabolism. You're burning less fat, you have less energy, you're not working out as much. So yeah, it's I think it's extremely, extremely, extremely difficult to avoid because it is just so prevalent everywhere in the country. I mean, you have going back to like a lot of these ingredients that are banned in other countries. I mean, you have if you take an Oreo from Japan and compare it to an Oreo in the United States, the Oreos in Japan have half the ingredients and they're
Mhm.
not as sweet because they manufacture these products dependent on the taste buds in different regions of the world. So they know that Japan is not accustomed to like crazy sugars and artificial flavors. So their treats that are, US companies are actually, you know, less sweet and actually
Yeah.
not as bad for you. But us, everything's just being pumped into the U.S. Everything's synthetic, artificial, high fructose corn syrup, addictive ingredients. Because they truly just want to get you hooked. And my perspective on it is that the FDA is tied with big pharma.
Mhm.
And listen, the best way to make money is to treat someone, not to cure them. So you
Mhm.
have the same company that is approving the ingredients that the average consumer is consuming, that's getting them sick, and then that same side of the business is now treating them. So
Right.
we're kind of stuck in this vicious cycle where if you don't have the information and the insight of what's really going on behind closed doors, you're never going to be able to escape. And it almost feels like we're at a point of no return. I think that a huge portion of the country is starting to wake up, and there is a big light that's being shined on a lot of these problems. And like you're one of the people that we have to thank for that, and like using your platform to spread this kind of information.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think we've just gone so far in such a bad direction, and the the resources that we initially relied on, like the FDA and big pharma, we're really starting to see are a very, very big problem. And
Yeah.
like, listen, Western medicine is great, we save a ton of lives, but people forget that it is a business. Like
Yep.
that's what it is. Everything that drives everything in the world is money. And when you kind of remove yourself from kind of like this, not to be too tinfoil hatty, but like this kind of mass psychosis around like what truly runs companies, you then realize like they don't have your best interest.
Yeah.
That's not what it's about. It's about money. And every ingredient that they put in there is facilitated to either grab your attention, whether that being release dopamine while you eat it to make sure that you keep eating it. And
Mhm.
even if it gets you sick, it's okay because they're partnered with this pharmaceutical company that's going to send you the medication to treat your obesity. And then you just keep running in this circle. So the best thing to do, I know this is a very long-winded answer, I'm sorry,
No, it's good.
is it's really whole foods.
Yep.
Just not the grocery, like consuming whole foods.
Yeah.
It's, I do keep a balanced diet. I'm like an 80-20
Mm-hmm.
person. And what I do is everything that I eat in my apartment is just super plain. Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
have, eggs. Like if I'm having bread, it's fresh sourdough,
Mm-hmm.
fermented. It's not like out of the bag,
Yep.
pre-sliced. Like for lunch, I had steak with a side of
Yep.
spinach. Tonight I'll have chicken, sweet potatoes. And then that'll kind of give me the balance where, okay, these are just all whole foods. I know exactly I'm just eating steak, vegetables, simple carbs, and I'm not popping open chips when I'm here. I'm not
Yeah.
snacking on anything. If I am, it's going to be a yogurt bowl with frozen food. So
Yep.
fruit. So everything that I keep in here, I have control over, that I know is just real whole foods. And then if I do go out, I allow myself to have a little bit more flexibility, because I do think having that kind of balance is very important. You do have to enjoy
Yeah.
yourself. But for the most part, control what you can control. And I know
Mm-hmm.
for me, if I keep something in my apartment, I'm gonna eat it. If it's unhealthy, like it's just, if it's within my grasp, I'm gonna
Yep.
eat it. So I make the decision, hey, I'm gonna keep none of that in here. I'm gonna prioritize whole foods and high quality macronutrients. So for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, when I'm in my apartment, that is my only option. And
Yeah.
you kind of like force yourself into that cycle.
When you look at kind of the future of men's health in general, what are some of the things that concern you the most? Just broad stroke, just speaking to men right now.
Yeah, I do think testosterone, and also the mental position around, I don't want to use this as like a blanket term of trying to be an alpha or the
Mhm.
best version of yourself. I mean, I think that I don't want to get political, and I won't, but there's a big position against the masculine man. And if I'm
Mhm.
speaking just to men, I think it's within 100% within your right as a
Mhm.
man to truly embrace what I believe we were put on this earth to do. I mean, we were put on this earth with high testosterone. We were meant to fight, we were meant to hunt,
Mhm.
and we were meant to protect and provide, and embrace this masculine essence to then attract the yin and the yang of a relationship, which is this feminine energy, to where you can then build a beautiful future and give back to society together. And I don't know why that's frowned upon. And I think
Mhm.
that the unfortunate reality is the foods that we're consuming are plummeting men's testosterone. A lot of the information and narratives are trying to kind of brush that masculine energy under the carpet and say that it's bad or sexist or whatever kind of position it may be. And I think that if you're a man and you want to be the best version of yourself, and embrace the hell out of masculine energy, start caring about what you're putting into your body, how it's affecting your body. And at the end of the day, don't let the masses determine how you feel or how you can provide for yourself or your loved ones. You just take control of your body, take control of your mind, and just try and block out the noise. Because I do think that a part of the reason why there are so many hormone disruptors that are approved and not banned is, listen, you take away, going back to my tinfoil hat, you take away
Mhm.
the masculine man, you take away a lot of the power in the people.
Mhm. It's totally right. And then you also add in all the infertility stuff that we're going through, and
Absolutely.
it's both and, right? It's the women's health, but it's also men's health. So couldn't agree more. It's a beautiful way to say it. And then kind of on the flip side of that, we were talking about some of this earlier, but just kind of in closing here, what are some of the things, both with building your company and what you're seeing right now, obviously approaching 30, kind of at the peak in so many ways of life? What are some of the things that you're optimistic about? Because there is a lot, to your point. We are better off than we ever have been, and there's a lot of reason for optimism. So what are some of those things that you think, as we look at the next year at least, but beyond that, that you're optimistic about from a human health perspective?
Yeah. So if you just look at market trends for not only the supplement space, but the general health and wellness space, I mean,
Hmm.
it's within the next 10 years, it's supposed to almost 4x. I mean,
Hmm.
there's just so much attention being drawn to the health and wellness space, and people say, supplement space is saturated, health and wellness is being saturated. It's really not. I mean, going back to the numbers,
Yeah.
over half the population is overweight.
Yep.
That's by no means, it's saturated in the wrong direction. So if
Right.
anything, this is the tip of the iceberg. So I think that's very exciting, is that people are on social media talking about health and wellness trends, and the exciting thing is it's not a trend. It
Yeah.
is here to stay. This is more of a movement, and what I like to hope and consider some sort of an awakening
Yep.
amongst everyone. And you even have a lot of the younger generation is starting to get into lifting earlier. I mean, I just look at myself as that example. How lifting and prioritizing the gym from the age of 14 really shaped the trajectory of my life. I mean,
Mhm.
it immediately instilled some sort of disciplinary component to my life, taught me really the beauty of kind of long-term gain. You
Mhm.
don't look like I do overnight. It took me 14, 15 years to get to this point. So you have this
Yeah.
delayed gratification that's extremely important, especially when, everything is so immediate. Like we are talking about shorter attention spans. We want everything now. Social media, it's all this get rich quick schemes, but that's just not the reality of everyday life. So
So true. This is such an
yeah,
important point when it comes to human health, is this
yes,
delayed gratification and how important that is. We're so, and this is the marketing. This is the point that I was making earlier with the race to the bottom with marketing, is that all the marketing is about immediacy, and the reality is everything that's good in life is it is delayed gratification. And even the way that we're teaching the next generation of how to spend money, like all of the buy now pay later, right, all of these different programs of financing, all of these different things, it's all about getting everything that you want right now, when the reality is that this idea and concept of delayed gratification is actually like the healthiest, one of the healthiest concepts
mm-hmm.
that you can learn physically. Obviously with bodybuilding, it's such a great example because there is no magic fix or magic pill or bullet or
Yeah,
whatever. Even if you're taking the most intense supplement stack that you can possibly take, you still have to do the work. And it's
yeah,
one of the most amazing things that I really appreciate about people who are serious about workouts, programs, marathoning, whatever it is, right? It's all kind of follows that same thing. It's in a principle that I mean, we have one daughter now. I'm having my second in a couple of weeks, and it's like one of the main things that I
congratulations.
think about with instilling into children. It's so important. So I'm glad you brought that up because it's a big aspect of bodybuilding. It's not just bodybuilding. I mean, again, marathoning, triathlon, all of those
Mm-hmm.
things, but it's a principle that we've really lost. And hopefully through health and wellness, for one, we can bring it back, because every single thing, whether it's a GLP-1 drug, whatever it might be, all the different surgeries, everything has repercussions, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
all of these things, I mean, even though there is a marketed or a thought of immediacy to them, there's actually a lot of issues with that, and that's our body and the natural force of our body, which is so powerful. And I think it's a very, very good area of teaching us philosophy that we just have totally missed. So, well, in closing here, anything else that you want to share? And most importantly, where can everyone find you and Goodroot, and how can they support the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So the last thing I will share,
Yeah.
and I think this is very important. So for anyone starting out, um, uh, something I see is very common is that people will try and work out and they'll try and get into lifting. Maybe they don't like it. There's no like one particular style of workout that you have to latch on to forever. If you don't like lifting, I think everyone should lift weights to a certain extent. It's very important for longevity and overall health. But if you're someone who's hasn't worked out, doesn't like working out, there's so many different avenues that you can pursue that'll get you into the routine of being an active person. And then once you're in that routine of being active, then you can start incorporating things that maybe you don't like as much, like weightlifting. I mean, if you don't like lifting weight to start, you can try cycling, you can try running, you can try boxing, jiu-jitsu, swimming, playing basketball, pickleball, like whatever it is, just start with being active.
Right.
If that's your biggest challenge, start with being active. And then once that's part of your routine, where a few days a week you're doing some sort of activity where you're breaking a sweat, you're getting, zone 3 or 4 cardio, then start incorporating other things, because it's not going to be as hard because it's already routine for you.
That's right.
So I think that's very important for people starting out. If you try one avenue of activity and you don't like it, there's a million different things that you can try that'll help you at least strive towards a more active lifestyle. And then for where you can find me, my name is Austin Greto. So it's Austin Greto on Instagram and YouTube. And then TikTok and Twitter is the Quad Father.
Awesome. That's great.
Big legs. So I kind of leaned into that one. And then you can get Goodroot at shopgoodroot.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Austin. Wonderful conversation. I know this is going to be helpful to so many people. So appreciate you joining us today. And we will certainly have you back on. Look forward to being in touch.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to the Gut Check podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think, like the episode, and share it with friends and family who may also benefit from learning about these important and educational health and wellness topics. You can find the Gut Check podcast on YouTube, also on Spotify, Instagram, and TikTok. The Gut Check podcast is brought to you by our team at Daily Nori. Daily Nori makes probiotic and prebiotic solutions accessible to all, because good health starts with gut health. To learn more about Daily Nori, please go to www.dailynori.com. Thank you.